Hi, I'm back. I want to show you what the yeast looks like. It's starting to activate, and you can see the little bubbles forming, which shows that I've activated the yeast sufficiently with the warm water. I'm going to let it sit for a few more minutes while I describe further steps to you. What I'm going to do is add the yeast mixture to the flour. But first, I'm going to take the flour and using my fist, put it right into the middle to make an indentation. What I'm going to do next is pour the salt into little wells along the side. I don't want the yeast and the salt to come into contact with each other right away. So I'm sort of hiding the salt in the corners. Next, I'm going to separate. I'm going to check my egg. I didn't mean separate. I'm going to check my egg to make sure that it's kosher. I'm using a clear glass. I crack my egg, and then I check to make sure that there are no blood spots. A blood spot in an egg makes the egg not kosher. It means that the egg has been fertilized, and we can't use a fertilized egg. So now we're ready to add the yeast mixture to the flour. And as you can see, the yeast is now nice and bubbly. Thank you for being so understanding with this camera action here. I'm going to pour the yeast mixture into the middle of the bowl, scraping down to get all the goodness out of the bowl that the yeast was in. To that, I'm going to add the oil, the balance of the sugar, and really quickly, a slightly beaten egg. I like to start this off using a spoon, and then I work into mixing it with my hands. It's starting to get a little stiff, and this is when I'm going to switch out to use my hand. It does feel sticky, but that's okay. I try to incorporate as much of the flour that's in the bowl into this mixture. It is, again, sticky, so I'm going to use just a little bit of the extra flour that I had set aside. That was probably about 3 or 4 tablespoons full, maybe less. Now the dough has a really good consistency, and I know that I could move it out onto the floured tabletop and do some nice kneading. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour, like a dusting, onto my board. Scraping the bowl with my hands to try to get as much of the good stuff out as I can. I will incorporate that into the flour. Using my other hand now, and now we're going to knead the dough. This is very, very therapeutic. I can feel that the dough has a good consistency, sort of like Play-Doh. If it sticks to your board, then take a little bit more flour and sprinkle it on the board. You could also take a little bit of flour and rub it into your hands. Continue kneading by folding the dough over itself and forward and back for about 8 to 10 minutes until the dough springs back when you touch it with your finger. The indentation still stayed there, so that means I need to knead it more. During which time you could probably listen to some music and relax as you get into the rhythm of kneading the dough. What I also did was I made sure that I had a nice warm spot available so that when I'm finished kneading the dough, I'm going to put the dough back into the bowl. I'm not bothering to clean out the bowl, by the way. All I do is drizzle some oil into the bowl, which I will show you. And then when I'm finished kneading, see, a little more flour, it's getting a little sticky. I'm still waiting for the dough, when I touch it, to have a life of its own. It's getting much better. Did you see that? Let me try it again so you could see. See how it sprung back up? That's what they mean when they say have a life of its own. I know it's not 10 minutes. Sometimes it works faster. I did use a combination of bread flour and all-purpose flour today. Don't worry if you don't have bread flour. All-purpose flour works beautifully. It's just I'm using what I have on hand. It looks like it has a life of its own. This is such a satisfying activity. I started making bread in earnest when we moved our family to Germany in 1986. Finding bread for the Sabbath was difficult, if not actually impossible, and making bread weekly was the only way for me to get bread for the Sabbath. There's a special time when you're making this bread. It's you're feeding your family, and you are it's just a connection that you have. Let's check on this now. Nice, springs back beautifully. I'm going to get a little oil and oil up this bowl. Again, I use olive oil when I do this. And I just drizzle it along the sides of the bowl so it drips down into the middle. Not too much, but just enough to coat the bowl. See it shiny? Now I plop the dough in the bowl, and then I flip it over so that the top of the dough is oiled. Now I'm going to cover it and put it in a warm place to rise for about an hour to an hour and a half, until this doubles in size in this very bowl. Let me get a cover. I'm going to cover it and place it in the warm spot, and I will get back to you with the next video when I'm ready to shape the dough. What I do is I keep an eye on it, peeking underneath the cover, just to check to make sure that it's rising. Every once in a while, over the course of the next hour to hour and a half, I will check on it, and as I see it rising, I will take my fist and I will punch it down in 3 or 4 or 5 spots. The term is literally punching down the dough. And then I'll step back and I'll let it rise again. So you could do that every 20 minutes or so over the next hour to hour and a half to 2 hours. Again, until you see it rise to double in its size. See you later.